Well, let me say a number of things in response to that. Firstly, NATO is the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And it has kept us safe for many decades, and we are fully committed to NATO. Secondly, that whatever the pressure on me and others, whatever the noise, I'm going to act in the British national interest in all the decisions that I make. And that's why I've been absolutely clear that this is not our war, and we're not going to get dragged into it. But I'm equally clear that when it comes to defence and security and our economic future, we have to have closer ties with Europe. That's why we had the summit last year. This year, as I've just announced, there'll be a further summit. We will make good on the commitments that we put in place last year, but we will also go further in relation to the alignment. Thank you very much, Harry. I've got Lucy from Sky. Lucy.
Thank you. Prime Minister, you're talking here, of course, today about the cost of living. You said yourself, nothing in this speech is new. You've got the Australian Prime Minister earlier talking about slashing tax on petrol and diesel, telling people not to use more than they need. Can you be really clear to people at home listening to this? Should they be looking at changing their behaviours now? Well,
in terms of the situation, we're monitoring it carefully. We had a Cobra meeting looking at the ongoing impacts here in Britain yesterday. That is being monitored daily. I had the business sector in on Monday to discuss with them, this was shipping, finance, insurance, to discuss with them mainly how we deal with the Strait of Hormuz, how quickly we can get action there to get the supply open or fully open. And that is what we are doing. They're decisions that we think are right here, and we will continue to do that. But I emphasise, again, it's clear to me that the main determinant now of the impact is going to be how long the conflict goes on, and the question of how quickly we can get safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Jack.
Hi, Prime Minister. Jack Elson from The Sun. Can I just pick up on that point? Do your manifesto commitments not to rejoin the customs union, free movement or single market still stand? And you previously said from this podium that you wouldn't be forced to choose between tethering Britain closer to either Europe or America, but it does seem that you are engaging with closer negotiations with Europe and you have a deteriorating personal relationship with Donald Trump. So is it fair that you are actually choosing Europe over America?
Well, manifesto commitments remain, but we made it clear in the manifesto that we wanted a closer relationship with Europe. So that is perfectly consistent with our manifesto. I'm not going to choose because I think it's in our interest to have a strong relationship with the US and with Europe. But I do think that when it comes to defence and security, energy, emissions and the economy, we need a stronger relationship with Europe. I actually think that will help strengthen our relationship with the US because successive presidents have said that Europe needs to do more on their defence and security. I've long argued that with European colleagues, that we should be doing more. And that's not just, for example, on defence spend, although it is on defence spend. It's also on how we spend, how we collaborate, cooperate. And that's why I've focused on deals, for example, that we've done with Norway in relation to frigates. Really good deal, very good for trade, very good for jobs in the Clyde, but really importantly, interoperability of the frigates. We can have our crews on their frigates, they can have their crews on our frigates. That, to me, is the future of a stronger European defence, which is bringing together the capability that we've had. So we don't just get each country developing its own capability. It's an ongoing discussion. I spoke at the Munich conference about it. I spoke at the Jeff meeting about it last week in Finland, that we have to go beyond just a numbers game and be much more integrated in the way that we work on defence.
So thank you very much, everybody. We're going to have a press conference in a couple of minutes. So.
Absolutely. You said you would clarify your stance on Article 5 just yesterday. Is that something you can explain
I stand
today?
with it. That's why I'm here. If I didn't stand with it, I wouldn't be here.
So you would defend countries even
Well,
if
what
they
did
don't
I
pay
just
up their
say?
fair
Yes,
share?
of course. Why would I be here? A big focus. In a very historic milestone this week, the NATO allies committed to dramatically increase their defense spending to that 5% of GDP. something that no one really thought possible. And they said, "You did it, sir, you did it." Well, I don't know if I did it, but I think I did.
Probably a more serious question. I think you just had a meeting with President Zelensky. Did you discuss...
And this is a monument really to victory, but it's a monumental win for the United States because we were carrying much more than our fair share. It was quite unfair, actually. But this is a big win for Europe and for actually Western civilization.
The fact that we are now at this 5%, the huge success in The Hague at the NATO summit, the fact that Europeans are also stepping up.
South Korea and Japan. In South Korea, I'll be meeting with a very good relationship, but that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It just
making sure that Putin understands that the president's vision this weekend of having a ceasefire, stop where they are, as you literally said.
So I think NATO's making a very foolish mistake, and I've long said that, you know, I wonder whether or not NATO would ever be there for us. So this was a great test. Because we don't need them, but they should have been there. We have a very special person, just won a tremendous election in a record-setting fashion. So you have some. And then in the case of NATO, they don't want to help us defend the strait, and they're the ones that need it. But now they're getting much nicer because they're seeing my attitude. They're getting much nicer. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's too late. You know, UK wants to send aircraft carriers now. And I said, I want the aircraft carriers before the war. I don't want them after the war is won. Thank you to the incredible members of my cabinet. They're doing a phenomenal job. Everybody pretty much agrees to that, including our newest member, Secretary of Homeland Security. One thing we're very disappointed, I'll say it publicly, we're very disappointed with NATO. Because NATO has done absolutely nothing. And I've always said, 25 years ago, I mean, I was somebody that wasn't a politician, but I was always involved in politics and I understood politics. I said 25 years ago that NATO's a paper tiger, but more importantly, that we'll come to their rescue, but they will never come to ours. An 18-year-old girl in Chicago named Sheridan Gorman was gunned down by... There's always surprises with war. They can be very bad surprises. I mean, wars are lost that should be won. Many wars are lost. You think a country is going to wipe somebody out, and they end up getting wiped out themselves. So it's always risky. But I think a tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't there. They just weren't there. It's going to make a lot of money for the United States because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO, hundreds of protecting them. And we would have always been there for them. But now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?